The fluorescent lights of the courtroom hummed, a dull counterpoint to the frantic drumming of my heart. My palms were slick, the cheap polyester of my dress clinging uncomfortably to my back. I adjusted the collar, a nervous tic I'd developed over the past few months. "You are okay?" Julian whispered, his hand finding mine under the table. I squeezed it, a silent plea for strength. "Just breathe," he murmured, his thumb rubbing soothing circles against my skin. I nodded, trying to focus on the rhythmic rise and fall of my chest. But the lawyer's droning voice felt like a swarm of bees buzzing in my ears. Uninvited to her mother's birthday, a woman uncovers a shocking family secret. The words echoed in my mind, a bitter mantra that had led me to this very moment. This wasn't how I envisioned my life. I wasn't supposed to be here, in a courtroom, fighting my own family. I was Grace Miller, a successful marketing executive, known for my meticulous planning and calm demeanor. My life had been a carefully constructed edifice of achievement, a deliberate counterpoint to the chaos that seemed to perpetually swirl around my sister, Melissa. But the foundation had crumbled, brick by carefully laid brick, revealing the rotten core beneath. My gaze drifted to the other side of the room. My mother, impeccably dressed as always, sat ramrod straight, her lips pursed in a thin line of disapproval. Beside her, Melissa, the golden child, radiated an air of bored indifference, playing with a strand of her perfectly highlighted hair. It was a familiar scene, one that had played out countless times throughout my life. Melissa, effortlessly charming, the center of attention, and me, relegated to the sidelines, invisible and unheard. The lawyer droned on, outlining the details of the case. The plaintiff, Grace Miller, alleges that the defendants, Evelyn and Melissa Carter, conspired to defraud her of her rightful inheritance. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations and years of simmering resentment. This wasn't just about the money, though the sum was considerable. It was about the systematic dismantling of my self-worth, the constant reminders that I was never enough. My mind wandered back to the day it all began, the seemingly innocuous event that had set this chain reaction in motion. My mother's 60th birthday. I had spent weeks planning the perfect gift, a vintage Chanel brooch I'd found at an antique shop in Paris. I imagined her delight, the rare moment of genuine connection we might share. But the invitation never came. Instead, I received a curt text from Melissa, informing me that the celebration was family only. A thinly veiled jab that excluded me, as always. Julian squeezed my hand again, bringing me back to the sterile reality of the courtroom. "It's almost over," he whispered. I managed a weak smile, my stomach twisting into knots. The lawyer was now presenting evidence, emails and text messages that painted a damning picture of my mother and sister's scheme. They had forged documents, manipulated accounts, and systematically funneled funds away from me, all while maintaining a facade of familial affection. "Objection," Melissa's lawyer, a slick, expensively dressed man, rose to his feet. His voice, smooth and practiced, echoed through the courtroom. "This evidence is circumstantial. It proves nothing." He paced before the judge, his words dripping with condescension. "Miss Miller's claims are based on nothing more than petty jealousy and a misguided sense of entitlement." My jaw clenched. Jealousy. Entitlement. He had no idea. He didn't know about the years of subtle digs, the constant comparisons, the gnawing feeling of being perpetually overlooked. He didn't know about the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the crushing weight of their disapproval. I glanced at Julian, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and concern. He knew. He had witnessed firsthand the insidious ways in which my family had undermined me. He had been my rock, my confidant, the one person who saw through their charade. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "We'll get through this." The judge banged his gavel, restoring order to the courtroom. "The evidence will be admitted," he declared, his voice firm and unwavering. A small flicker of hope ignited within me. This was it. This was my chance to finally expose the truth, to reclaim what was rightfully mine, to finally break free from the suffocating grip of my family's manipulation. The lawyer continued, presenting a mountain of evidence that meticulously documented their deceit: bank statements, emails, even a handwritten note from my mother, outlining their plan to teach Grace a lesson. Each piece of evidence felt like a vindication, a small victory in a war one had been fighting my entire life. The day wore on, the air in the courtroom growing thick with tension. The opposing lawyer continued to object, his voice growing increasingly shrill. But the evidence was overwhelming. The truth was finally out in the open, laid bare for all to see. And as I sat there, listening to the lawyer's closing arguments, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This wasn't the ending I had envisioned, but it was an ending nonetheless. A chance to close one chapter and begin another. A chance to finally write my story. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks before Mum's 60th birthday. I was at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at a spreadsheet that refused to make sense. My phone buzzed, displaying that. I picked it up, a small smile playing on my lips. "Hey, Dad, how are you?" I asked, anticipating an invitation to discuss birthday plans. We hadn't finalized the restaurant yet, and I was hoping we could try that new Italian place downtown. "Olivia," Dad started, his voice hesitant. I immediately felt a knot forming in my stomach. That tone never meant anything good. "There's been a change of plans," he cleared his throat. "We think it would be better if you didn't attend." Words hung in the air, sharp and cold. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. What are you talking about?" My voice was barely a whisper. I felt the flush of heat creeping up my neck. "Your mother, well, she's stressed. And with Melissa and Jake coming, and all the other arrangements," his voice trailed off. "Melissa and Jake, of course, my perfect sister and her perfect boyfriend." Suddenly, the spreadsheet swam before my eyes, stressed. I echoed, a word tasting like ash in my mouth. "So, I'm the stressor." "It's my mother's 60th birthday, Dad. I want to be there." I felt a wave of nausea rising in my throat. This was a pattern. A cruel, repetitive pattern. "We know, sweetie, but it's just complicated. We'll celebrate with you another time. I promise." His voice was strained, filled with a false cheerfulness that grated on my nerves. "Another time." The familiar refrain, the consolation prize for being the less loved daughter. I wanted to scream, to hurl the phone across the room, to tell him exactly how unfair and hurtful this was. But years of experience had taught me the futility of such outbursts. They would only be met with more platitudes and empty promises. "So, just Melissa?" I asked, my voice flat. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a confirmation of what I already knew. "Yes, just Melissa and Jake, and a few close friends." He rushed through the words, as if eager to end the conversation. "Right," I reply, my voice tight. "Close friends." Meaning Melissa's friends, of course. People I barely knew. I closed my eyes, picturing my sister's radiant smile, her effortless charm. Melissa, the golden child. Melissa, who could do no wrong. My mind drifted back to a Christmas morning when I was 12. I'd saved up my allowance for months to buy Mom a beautiful hand-painted ceramic jewelry box. I spent hours meticulously wrapping it, tying it with a satin ribbon. I couldn't wait to see her face light up when she opened it. Christmas morning arrived, and Melissa, as usual, was the center of attention. She unwrapped a mountain of gifts. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, the latest gadgets. My small, carefully wrapped box was almost lost in the pile. When Mom finally got around to opening it, Her reaction was lukewarm. "Oh, that's nice, Olivia," she'd said, eyes already scanning the remaining gifts. Meanwhile, Melissa unwrapped a similar jewelry box. But this one was from a high-end boutique, inlaid with mother-of-pearl and lined with velvet. Mom's face lit up. "Oh, Melissa, this is absolutely exquisite. Thank you so much." She'd gushed over the box, holding it up to the light, admiring its intricate details. My own gift lay forgotten on the floor, the satin ribbon slightly askew. I remember the burning shame that washed over me, the lump in my throat that made it hard to breathe. I'd spent months saving for that gift, pouring all my love and excitement into it, and it had been dismissed in a matter of seconds, eclipsed by Melissa's flashier, more expensive offering. That Christmas morning was a microcosm of my entire childhood, a constant reminder that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be enough. I would never be as good as Melissa. "Olivia, are you still there?" My father's voice snapped me back to the present. "Yeah, Dad, I'm here," I said, my voice hollow. "Good. Well, we'll see you soon for another celebration." A forced cheerfulness was back. I could practically hear him mentally wiping his hands clean of the unpleasant task. "Sure," I mumbled, my heart sinking. Another celebration. Another empty promise. "Okay. Bye, sweetie." He hung up before I could say anything else. I placed the phone on my desk, the cold plastic a stark contrast to the burning tears that welled in my eyes. I stared at the spreadsheet, the numbers blurring into meaningless squiggles. I couldn't focus. My mind was a whirlwind of hurt, anger, and resentment. Why? Why did they always do this to me? I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. I had a presentation to prepare for, a deadline looming. I needed to push these emotions aside and focus on work. But the hurt lingered, a dull ache in my chest. It was a familiar pain, a pain I had learned to live with. But this time, something felt different. This time, the hurt was mixed with a simmering anger, an anger that was slowly starting to boil. And I had a feeling that this time, things would be different. This time, I wouldn't just swallow my pride and accept the crumbs they threw my way. This time, I would fight back. The cheap porcelain ballerina figurine, a relic from my childhood, felt colder than usual under my fingertips. It was a Saturday night, the kind where the silence of my apartment screamed louder than any party ever could. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window pane, a ghost in my own home. "Happy birthday, Mum," I whispered to the empty room, a bitter taste clinging to the words. My mother's 60th birthday. A milestone celebration, and I wasn't there. I'd been explicitly, pointedly uninvited. "It's just family. Olivia, Melissa, my ever-perfect older sister," had purred over the phone, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet condescension. "You know how Mom gets. She wouldn't want complications. That was me. The family glitch, the square peg in the perfectly round hole. I clutched the ballerina tighter, its rough edges digging into my palm. It was a gift from my grandmother, Nana Rose, given to me on my 10th birthday. "For my little dancer," she'd said, her eyes twinkling, "graceful and strong. Just like you, Nana Rose." The one person who saw me, who valued me. A sharp pang of loss shot through me. She was gone now, and with her went my last bastion within the family fortress. I ran a thumb over the ballerina's faded paint. "They don't see me, Nana," I murmured, my voice cracking. "They never have." The exclusion from my mother's birthday party was just the latest wound, the freshest layer of salt. It stung more than the others, though. 60 years, 6 decades of a life I'd been a part of, yet somehow always remained on the fringes of. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. "Everything okay? You've been quiet." I stared at the message, a lump forming in my throat. Just tired, I typed back, deleting the string of angry words that threatened to spill onto the screen. I couldn't burden him with this, not again. I sank onto the sofa, the plush cushions offering little comfort. The memories, like unwelcome guests, began to flood in. The Christmas when Melissa received a brand new car, a gleaming red convertible, while I unwrapped a sweater to sizes too big. The graduation ceremony, where my parents beamed with pride as Melissa delivered the valedictorian speech, their eyes barely acknowledging my presence in the crowd. The constant, subtle digs disguised as jokes. Olivia, dear, why don't you try wearing something more flattering? My mother would say, her gaze lingering on my slightly less than perfect figure. Tonight absence, though, felt different. It was a deliberate erasure, a clear message that I was not wanted. I wasn't part of their carefully curated family portrait. A wave of nausea whooshed over me. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the images of laughter and celebration that I imagined were unfolding at my mother's party. The clinking of champagne glasses, the warm glow of candlelight, the easy camaraderie that I'd always yearned for but never experienced. I pictured Melissa, radiant in a designer dress, the center of attention as always. Jake, her boyfriend, would be there too, his arm possessively draped around her waist. The thought of them together, basking in the warmth of family acceptance, twisted the knife deeper. Suddenly, a specific memory, sharp and painful, pierced through the fog of my misery. It was Melissa's 21st birthday. A grand affair held at the country club, complete with a live band and an ice sculpture shaped like a swan. I'd spent weeks agonizing over what to wear, finally settling on a simple blue dress that I thought made me look elegant. I arrived at the party feeling nervous, but hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe they would see me, truly see me for who I was. Olivia, Melissa shrieked, rushing towards me. She looked stunning in a shimmering gold gown. You made it. I'm so glad you could come. Her hug felt stiff and perfunctory. Happy birthday, Mel, I said, trying to ignore the pang of disappointment. The night unfolded in a predictable pattern. Melissa was showered with gifts and compliments, while I lingered on the periphery, feeling like an intruder in my own family. I tried to engage in conversations, but they always seemed to drift away from me, leaving me stranded in a sea of unfamiliar faces. Then, it happened. The moment that seared itself into my memory, a brand of humiliation that I still carried with me. I was standing near the dessert table, admiring the elaborate birthday cake, when Jake approached me. He held the champagne flutes, a charming smile playing on his lips. To the less celebrated Miller sister, he said, handing me a glass. May your next birthday be less forgettable. His eyes glinted with a cruel amusement. I felt my cheeks burn. Excuse me, I stammered, my hand trembling as I took the glass. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Don't take it personally, Olivia. It's just, well, you know how it is. Melissa's always been the star. You're more of the supporting cast. He winked, then turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling small and insignificant. The champagne tasted like ash in my mouth. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the shadows and escape the suffocating feeling of rejection. I slipped out of the party unnoticed, tears streaming down my face. I drove home in a daze. The image of Jake's smug face burned into my mind. The less celebrated sister, the supporting cast, those words echoed in my ears, a constant reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Now, sitting alone in my quiet apartment, the memory felt as raw as if it had happened yesterday. The exclusion from my mother's birthday was not an isolated incident. It was a culmination of years of being overlooked, undervalued, and dismissed. A wave of anger, hot and fierce, surged through me, this time It felt different. This time, the hurt had transformed into something else. Something powerful. Something resembling resolve. I looked at the ballerina in my hand, its delicate features now seeming to reflect a steely determination. "They'll see me," I whispered, my voice firm. "They will all see me." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. My stomach churned, a knot tightening with each echoing click of my heels on the polished marble floor. The hallway stretched out before me, lined with identical frosted glass doors, each concealing secrets, whispers, and the machinations of power within this towering corporation. I stopped before the last door, my reflection staring back a ghost in a tailored navy suit. "You can do this, Olivia," I whispered, the words barely audible above the hum of the air conditioning. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door to Jake Wilson's office. He glanced up, surprise flickering in his eyes, quickly replaced with a manufactured smile. "Olivia, what a surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure?" He gestured towards a sleek, chrome chair opposite his desk. "Just wanted to check in, Jake," I said, settling into the chair, my gaze sweeping over the minimalist decor. "See how you're settling in." He'd only been with the company a few weeks, brought on as a project manager, a position I had ironically interviewed him for. He hadn't been the most qualified, not by a long shot. But he had something else going for him, Melissa. "Everything's great, thanks," he replied, his voice a shade too smooth. "It's a fantastic opportunity, a real game changer." His eyes darted around the room, avoiding mine. He knew. He had to know. "I'm glad to hear it," I said, keeping my tone even. "I know Melissa will be thrilled with your success." The mention of her name, as always, brought a subtle shift in his demeanor, a softening around the edges. "Yeah. She's been a huge support," he mumbled, fiddling with a pen on his desk. "Speaking of Melissa, have you heard from your mother? About the birthday party, I mean." He feigned casualness, but the question hung heavy in the air. "Not a word," I replied, a cold smile playing on my lips. The uninvited to her mother's birthday, a woman uncovers a shocking family secret hook had been cast, and I was reeling him in slowly. This whole charade, this orchestrated betrayal, had begun with that very invitation, or rather, the lack of it. "That sod," Jake stammered. "I'm sure it's just an oversight." He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his chair. "An oversight," I echoed, raising an eyebrow. "That's what you think." He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "Jake, let's be honest with each other. You know exactly why I wasn't invited to my own mother's birthday. You and Melissa saw to that. The accusation hung between us, thick with unspoken truths." He paled, the blood draining from his face. "Olivia, you don't know what you're talking about." His voice was a weak whisper. "He was a terrible liar. Don't you?" I leaned forward, my voice low and menacing. "Let's talk about the Peterson project, shall we? The one you conveniently landed right after I presented my proposal to the board. My proposal, full of innovative strategies and painstaking research, now inexplicably mirroring his own." "That was just coincidence," he stammered, his eyes darting around the room again, searching for an escape. "Coincidence," I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "You think the board is that easily fooled, Jake? Or do you think I'm that naive?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. He was trapped. He knew it. I knew it. The air crackled with tension. "I have proof," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Emails, messages, even voice recordings. Proof that you and Melissa conspired to sabotage my career, to steal my ideas, to make me look incompetent." I reached into my briefcase, Pulling out a thick manila folder, I placed it on his desk, his weight a physical manifestation of the evidence it contained. He stared at it as if it were a venomous snake, ready to strike. What do you want? He finally choked out, his voice barely a whisper. He was defeated, broken. I want what's mine, I reply, my gaze unflinching. I want my career back. I want my reputation restored. And I want you and Melissa to pay for what you've done. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. Each tick felt like a hammer blow, driving home the reality of his situation. Finally, he looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. What do you want me to do? He was pleading now, his voice trembling. I want you to testify, I said, my voice unwavering. I want you to tell the truth about what you and Melissa did. He hesitated, his gaze fixed on the folder on his desk. He knew the consequences of his actions. He knew the damage it would do to Melissa, to their relationship, to her standing in the family. But he also knew he had no choice. Okay, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I'll do it. A slow smile spread across my face. The first piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. The years of being overshadowed culminate in a meticulously planned revenge were finally bearing fruit. The black sheep's quiet strength turns into a powerful weapon of retribution. This was just the beginning. The real game was about to start. I stood up, smoothing down my skirt. Good, I said, my voice crisp and businesslike. I'll be in touch. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. Oh, and Jake? I looked back at him, my eyes cold. Don't even think about telling Melissa about this conversation. He shook his head, his face ashen. He wouldn't dare. He knew what I was capable of. I left his office, the click of my heels echoing in the silent hallway, a soundtrack to my victory. This was only the first move, the twist in the narrative. I had a lot more planned for Melissa and for my mother, who had so readily dismissed me, cast me aside as the unwanted daughter. Their carefully constructed world of privilege and deception was about to crumble. And the discarded daughter, would be the one to bring it down. Outside, the city sprawled before me, a concrete jungle of shimmering glass and steel. The setting sun cast long shadows across the buildings, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. It was a beautiful sight, a fitting backdrop for the storm that was brewing. The storm I had created, and I couldn't wait to unleash it. The courtroom was silent, thick with anticipation. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the hushed backdrop. My lawyer, Ms. Caldwell, squeezed my hand reassuringly. It's almost over, Grace, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the whir of the air conditioning. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Jake stood across the aisle, radiating confidence, a smug smile playing on his lips. He'd been so sure of himself throughout this whole ordeal, so certain of his victory. He'd even winked at Melissa, who sat beside him, her hand intertwined with his. The sight made my stomach churn. It was a grotesque pantomime of their supposed love story, a charade I was about to dismantle. Judge Thompson cleared his throat, the sound echoing through the silent chamber. Mr. Harrison, he addressed Jake, his voice stern. Does the defense have any further witnesses or evidence to present? Jake shook his head, his smile faltering slightly. No, Your Honor, we rest our case. He'd clearly expected a swift dismissal of my lawsuit. After all, he'd meticulously covered his tracks, or so he thought. Very well, Judge Thompson replied, shifting his gaze to me. Miss Miller, do you have any closing statements? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was it, the culmination of months of meticulous planning, of painstakingly gathering evidence, of enduring their condescending smirks and dismissive remarks. Years of being overshadowed culminated in a meticulously planned revenge. I began, my voice trembling slightly at first but gaining strength with each word. I was uninvited to my mother's birthday. A woman uncovers a shocking family secret, a secret that revealed a pattern of betrayal and manipulation that extended far beyond personal slights. I paused, letting my words hang in the air. My sister, Melissa, and her boyfriend, Jake, systematically sabotaged my career at Militech, using stolen designs and confidential information to advance their own agendas. I turned my gaze to Melissa, who now sat rigid, her face pale. The smug confidence had vanished, replaced by a look of dawning realization. They thought they were untouchable. I continued, my voice rising with each word. They thought they could steal my work, my ideas, my future, and get away with it. They were wrong. I turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I present exhibit a series of emails between Jake and Melissa detailing their scheme to steal my designs for the new software platform. Exhibit B, financial records showing the sudden influx of funds into Jake's offshore accounts shortly after the launch of the competing software. And finally, I paused for dramatic effect, holding up a thick manila envelope. Exhibit C, a confession, signed by Jake Harrison himself, admitting to his role in the conspiracy and implicating Melissa Miller as his accomplice. The courtroom erupted in a cacophony of gasps and murmurs. Jake's face drained of color. He looked wildly around the room, as if searching for an escape route. Melissa burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. Ms. Caldwell stepped forward, placing the envelope on the judge's desk. He opened it, his eyes scanning the document inside. The silence in the courtroom was deafening, broken only by the rustling of the papers. Judge Thompson looked up, his expression grave. Mr. Harrison, Ms. Miller, he said, his voice resonating with authority. This evidence is damning. I find in favor of the plaintiff, Grace Miller. A wave of relief washed over me. It was over. I had won. But it wasn't just about the lawsuit. It was about more than just the professional sabotage. It was about years of being overlooked, undervalued, and dismissed. It was about being the black sheep, the quiet one, the one who always took the high road while they trampled all over me. Judge Thompson continued, outlining the terms of the settlement. Mr. Harrison will be required to pay Ms. Miller restitution for the damages incurred, including lost wages and legal fees. Furthermore, he paused, his gaze fixed on Melissa. Ms. Miller, as an accomplice in this scheme, will forfeit her inheritance from the Miller family trust. Melissa's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. The trust fund, the one she'd always flaunted, the one that guaranteed her a life of luxury and privilege. It was gone, just like that, but the final blow, the true payoff, was yet to come. I cleared my throat, addressing the judge once more. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady and clear. I have one more piece of evidence to present. A letter, written by my grandmother, Amelia Miller, shortly before her death. I produced a sealed envelope from my bag, my hand trembling slightly as I handed it to the judge. This letter, I explained, details my grandmother's true intentions for her estate. She was aware of Melissa's manipulative nature and her fear of my potential, a fear Melissa and her mother fostered. She foresaw the possibility of my being unfairly treated. Judge Thompson opened the letter, his brow furrowed in concentration. As he read, his eyes widened in surprise. He looked up at me, then back at the letter, a flicker of understanding in his gaze. "This changes everything," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. He cleared his throat and addressed the courtroom. In this letter, he announced, Amelia Miller clearly states her desire for her granddaughter, Grace Miller, to inherit the entirety of her estate, including the family home and all its contents. This supersedes any previous stipulations outlined in her will. The gasp that rippled through the courtroom was audible this time. Melissa stared at me, her face contorted in a mixture of shock, rage, and utter disbelief. She had lost everything: her inheritance, her future, her sense of entitlement. I met her gaze, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. One birthday invitation sparks a chain of events that would change everything, I thought to myself, the words echoing the sentiment I'd held on to for so long. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. It was about finally stepping out of the shadows and into the light. And it felt exquisite.